Part 27. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 261. Nan 11 raised her head, her eyes full of strong emotions. Wrong you, I had a real dream before. Dreams are just dreams. Wrong you didn't know whether he was trying to convince her or himself. 11 things that have really happened won't be fully presented in dreams. Nan 11 was silent. What if it wasn't a dream? Wrong you was startled. The uneasy atmosphere slowly spread between the two of them, as if a veil was about to be lifted, and each of them wanted to expose the long-hidden secrets under the veil. Nan 11 couldn't help thinking, why not tell him all about her past and present lives? Husband and wife should be honest with each other, tell him that it was not a simple dream. She had personally experienced his death, suffered Gu Qingshi's betrayal and calculations, and saw with her own eyes that cold arrows shot into his body. With his cognition and tolerance, he should believe in things like past and present lives, and he himself once said that he believed that people have past and present lives. However, when the words came to his lips, Nan 11 was the first to lose the battle. What happens after she says it? Should she tell him that in her previous life, Gu Qingshi betrayed her and plotted against her, but Wrong Yu always responded to her requests and held her in his heart, and even before he died, she still held her tightly in his arms. She owed him a life, so she decided to marry him to compensate for his sincerity in her previous life. Can he accept such a result? Nan 11 did not have the courage to gamble, because she knew that Wrong Yu loved too deeply and too persistently, and could not withstand the slightest emotional blow. If he thought that she was only marrying him with an apologetic and compensatory mentality, would he be sad? Although she gradually fell in love with him later, the deeper she loved him, the more she dared not take risks. Nan 11 was silent for a moment and quietly gave up the idea. You're right. Nan 11 leaned into his arms gently, and said softly, how can a dream really tell the whole story of the past? Wrong Yu's heartstrings relaxed slightly, and he subconsciously hugged her tighter, saying softly, don't take it too seriously. Nan 11 responded quietly, nestled in his arms, listening to Wrong Yu's strong heartbeat, and couldn't help thinking, was the strange dream just now a coincidence? It is said that you dream about something during the day, and it is possible that she had that strange dream because she kept thinking about the identity of the Queen of Dongling these 2 days. Sighing softly, she said, it's late, go to bed. Wrong Yu hummed, and gently helped her lie down. How do you feel these 2 days? Do you feel uncomfortable? Do you want to rest here for 2 days before leaving? Nan 11 smiled and said, I have been taken care of like a jade doll along the way, and I am afraid that I will be bumped or bumped. How can I feel uncomfortable? Wrong Yu lay beside her, staring at his eyebrows and eyes tenderly and affectionately, with a dark color in his eyes that Nan 11 could not understand. It was like obsession, as deep as the sea. It made it impossible to peek. Nan 11 slowly closed her eyes, her mind was quiet, and her whole body was at peace. It seemed that just lying beside this person and feeling his breath lingering could make her abandon all her worries and sorrows, and her body and mind could be completely relaxed. However, the pair of eyes that had been falling on her face were like a shadow, lingering, so strong that even with her eyes closed, she could feel the complex emotions from the bottom of his heart that could not be expressed, like uneasiness, like trepidation, like a struggle and hesitation with thousands of words but not knowing how to speak. Wrong Yu, what secrets are hidden in your heart? As strong and noble as you are, would you also feel uneasy about something that others don't know? Nan 11's heart twisted slightly, and her heart was in pain. If possible, she hoped to share his anxiety. If such anxiety was caused by her, she would give her all to reassure him and let him not be so hesitant. One night passed. It drizzled in the morning, and the journey was naturally delayed. Wrong Yu was not in a hurry to travel, and was afraid that Nan 11 would be tired from the journey. It was natural to stop and rest after the rain. The rainy weather easily makes people lazy, not to mention that she didn't sleep well last night. Nan 11 slept in Rong Yu's arms until almost noon in the morning. She actually woke up once in the morning, but Rong Yu's gentle and low voice, "Be good, it's raining today, don't rush to travel," coaxed her to continue sleeping, so she missed breakfast and slept until almost noon. I slept so hard that my bones are almost numb." Nan 11 opened her eyes and looked at the noble man who was so close to her. His handsome face was so attractive that Nan 11 reached out and held his face, and kissed him. Rong Yu. He had just woken up and hadn't washed up yet, so she kissed his face and lazily greeted him, "Good morning, my husband." "Good morning, my beloved concubine." Rong Yu's lips curled up, and the tenderness that eroded his bones was hidden in his eyes. "Did you sleep enough? Are you hungry? Do you want to get up and eat?" Rong Yu. Nan 11 ignored his question and stared at his handsome face. "You are so beautiful, the more you look at it, the more beautiful it is, like a blooming flower." Rong Yu's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but smile. "Men are like flowers." "Yes, my husband is more beautiful than flowers." Nan 11 didn't think there was anything wrong with the adjective she used. "When I get up in the morning and take a look, I feel good all day long." Rong Yu couldn't help but curl up his lips. "I'll let you see it every day and every night in the future. In this case, is it possible for me to become a foolish king who will never go to court again?" Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and smiled, her eyebrows filled with brilliance. "The civil and military officials in the courts of various countries should all be about the same age. There are a group of old men and a group of middle-aged people. A group of young people, but whether they are old or young, they are probably all crooked and not as good looking as one of my husband's fingers." Rong Yu chuckled, "My beloved, you just got up in the morning and ate honey. Do you think I look like a demon concubine who brings trouble to the country by serving people with sex?" Nan 11 pondered. "The demon concubine's greatest advantage is her beauty that captivates the country, and the second is her ability to charm the king and dote on her. She is good at coaxing people, and the coaxing is just right, the sweet words can penetrate into the king's heart, and the emperor is so confused that he can't tell what night it is. Well, although I haven't quite grasped the essence, the truth is actually this." Rong Yu's heart softened into a ball, and she said, "My beloved concubine doesn't have to do anything to overturn this mortal world." Rong Yu. Nan 11 said melancholy, "You have been infected by me. You used to be as noble as a white crane in the sky, and you looked down at the world like an ant." Nan 11's voice was calm. "Now you have been dragged into the mortal world by me, and you can never go back to the indifferent and noble life you once had." Rong Yu said, "My beloved concubine, don't you like me like this? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered." Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 262. "I love her so much that I can't help myself." Nan 11 smiled with her eyebrows creasing. "I can only look up at the white crane in the sky. Only my husband who has entered the mortal world makes me dare to let go of all restraints and love." Looking at the smile on Rong Yu's lips, Nan 11 sighed, "I am a mortal, and I can only like mortals, so I dragged my husband down to share the prosperity of the world with me and experience the 7 emotions and 6 desires in the world. But is my husband's recent mood swings too much? Aren't you afraid of damaging your majesty as the regent if you can't help but laugh so happily?" Rong Yu shook his head, "Not afraid. What does majesty mean when she is by your side? Be restrained." Nan 11 reached out and touched the corner of his lips. "Hide your joy in your heart and keep your joy and anger invisible." Rong Yu frowned, "My beloved, this is making things difficult for me." Embarrassed, Nan 11 raised her eyebrows lightly. "I thought that for you, keeping your emotions and anger indistinguishable was something you could do without any effort. That was before." Rong Yu told the truth. "After I have my beloved concubine, I don't need to show my anger, but my joy must be on my face. This way, everyone can know that if my beloved concubine marries me, I can make me happier than all men in the world and immersed in endless joy every day." Rong Yu. Nan 11 frowned, seemingly puzzled, am I really that good? She had doubted this matter more than once, but she could never figure out what was it about herself that attracted Rong-yu. He was born to be a noble person, possessing all the power and wealth, and all the beauties in the world were like crucian carp crossing the river. As long as he wanted, there was nothing he couldn't get. Why are you so obsessed with her? You are so good that no one else can. Rong-yu didn't hesitate, his voice was low but with an indescribable emotion. 11er just said that I am the white crane in the sky. In my husband's heart, my beloved concubine is the one far away in the clouds. The unattainable noble white crane. Nan 11 was slightly shocked, and somehow she remembered the woman in noble clothes in her dream. She shook her head gently, not wanting to think about the mess anymore, and turned to look out the window. Should we get up? If we stay up any longer, we will have to wait for dinner. Will my mother think that we are the same person, two lazy people? My beloved concubine is pregnant, so she should have more rest. Rong-yu gave her an honest reason to stay in bed. Pregnant women tend to get sleepy, and my mother-in-law can understand. Nan 11 said, but I don't have any obvious symptoms. I said yes, Rong-yu said, pressing his nose against hers. No refutation is allowed. It was a rare occasion for him to use his power as a husband, which only made Nan 11 laugh muffledly. Yes, my husband is a wise man. The two chatted for a while, and when they got up to wash up, Nan 11's mother had even eaten her lunch. In her words, Rong-yu and Nan 11 were inseparable, and the dust and the red clothes were like glue. I, a lonely person, look so different no matter what I did. If necessary, please let Chu Xuanyi come and have lunch with me. So Chu Xuanyi, who was also a loner, had the honor to have lunch with the eldest princess, and heard the eldest princess say something meaningful. I counted on my fingers last night. Xuanyi, you are in great danger. Chu Xuanyi was so confused by what she said that she hurriedly asked for advice. Eldest princess, you might as well speak frankly. The secret of heaven must not be leaked. After Xianyuan 11 filled his stomach, he asked his personal maid to follow her to the back garden, leaving only the sentence that made Chu Xuanyi restless. After the rain, the chrysanthemums bloomed more and more proudly, blooming with a noble and elegant posture in the slightly humid sky and earth. Xianyuan 11 walked slowly on the path among the flowers, admiring the various forms of chrysanthemums alone. Fallen flowers covered the bluestone path, and they flew in the breeze. The air filled with cold moisture brushed against the skin, sending waves of bone-chilling coldness. After a rain, this cool autumn seems to have entered the cold winter directly. Xianyuan 11 said lightly, have you sent the cold-proof clothes prepared for Princess Feng? The maid behind her replied, sent it over. But when I sent it in the morning, it was given to Miss Yanyu, who was next to Princess Feng. She said that Princess Feng hadn't gotten up yet. When Xianyuan 11 heard this, she just shook her head. There is a daughter in my family who has grown up, but has since become someone else's treasure. Although the mother was happy for her happiness, she could not help but feel a little melancholy. The daughter she had raised so hard was snatched away by a wolf outside just after she was in her prime. The key is that her daughter is also devoted to this wolf, and only turns the fierce and powerful Wolf King into a soft finger wrap. A gust of wind blew by, causing goosebumps to appear on the skin. Eldest princess, the maid held the umbrella above her head. It's going to rain again. It's a bit cold in the garden. Would you like to go back to the house and have a cup of hot tea to warm yourself up? Well, let's go. Xianyuan 11 turned around. There is nothing to do in the afternoon. I can also have a good sleep. The weather today seems to be suitable only for sleeping. The rain just stopped for a while, and now it started raining again. Yanyu walked into the inner hall and put on Nan 11 a red cloak with white fur edges. The eldest princess has given instructions. It's cold, so please try your best, princess. Just stay in the palace and be affectionate with the prince. Don't go out to be romantic in the rain. It won't be good if you catch the wind and cold. The princess has a baby in her belly, so many medicines cannot be used, so she must pay attention to keeping warm and protected from the cold. My own body. Hearing this, Nan 11 raised her eyes and looked at Rongyu, who was standing in front of the window. She raised her eyebrows slightly and raised a smile on her lips. Is this really what my mother said? Rongyu turned around, nodded and said, my mother-in-law should have said that. Speaking of this, he walked to Nan 11, took over Yin Yu's work, helped Nan 11 tie the cloak belt, then stepped back and looked at the girl in front of him. This cloak seemed to be tailor-made for Nan 11. The pure red cloak, with snow-white fur on the cuffs and collar, not only made her look beautiful and noble, but also made her skin look like snow, delicate and bright, and her clear and beautiful eyes sparkled. It seemed that all the beautiful words used on her could not describe her beauty in 1/10,000%. Rongyu Nan 11's mouth twitched slightly. We are not going out today, there is no need to dress so. It is necessary. Rongyu took her arm and walked to the outer hall. It rained today, and the temperature dropped suddenly, so you should wear more. Paused, and this cloak given by my mother-in-law is very beautiful, worthy of you. The table in the outer hall was already filled with all kinds of delicious delicacies. Nan 11 turned her head and saw that Yin Yu had taken all the maids out of consideration for her prince's dignity. Now there were only her and Rongyu in the palace. Rongyu helped Nan 11 sit down on the chair, and then sat down next to her. You have been traveling for days, so I will give you some nourishment today. You don't have to cook it yourself. Just tell me what you want to eat. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 263. Nan 11 couldn't help but remind him, Rongyu, I'm just pregnant, my arms and legs are not broken. Rongyu said, my beloved concubine doesn't like this. Nan 11 was afraid that he would be sad, so she shook her head quickly, I'm afraid of tiring you. You're not tired of leading troops in battle, so how can you be tired of taking care of my beloved concubine? Rongyu raised his eyes to look at her. Does my beloved concubine feel that she is more difficult to serve than thousands of troops? Nan 11 was speechless for a while. How could she, a delicate girl, compare to the power of thousands of troops? He thinks too highly of her. Nan 11 still couldn't get over Rongyu's insistence. She sat there quietly and docilely, and Rongyu fed her mouthful by mouthful, and picked out her favorite food. She was indeed happy. Any woman in the world who saw the scene would probably be envious and jealous. But Nan 11 always felt that something was wrong. She found that she seemed to have been completely controlled by Rongyu since she didn't know when. She couldn't bear him to feel sad or lonely, couldn't bear his feelings to be rejected, was afraid that he would have wild thoughts, and was afraid that his love would be hurt, so she wanted to do everything he wanted to do, except for the initial reason that she married him because of compensation and guilt. The biggest reason should be that his self-harming behavior really scared her, leaving a huge shadow in her heart. But Nan 11 still felt something was wrong. Obviously Rongyu was so gentle, except for his strong feelings that were a bit paranoid, he was really good to her and there was really no flaw to find, but where did the feeling of something wrong come from in her heart? Nan 11 thought so in her heart, and couldn't help but look up at him. Her eyes didn't blink, and she seemed to be thinking about something. 11 what's wrong? Rongyu, did you give me a drug? Nan 11 held her chin, her eyes were filled with tenderness and smile, her voice sounded a little silly, I think you are the best husband in the world, I seem to be more and more inseparable from you, I can't even imagine, if you are not by my side in the future. Don't talk nonsense. Rongyu raised his hand to her lips, how can I not be by your side? Don't think about getting rid of me in this life. Nan 11 frowned, threatening me. Yes, threatening you. Rongyu put down his chopsticks, I will follow you wherever you go, Don't think about getting rid of me. Nan 11 thought quietly, is this something that Rong Yu, the regent of the Great Zhou, would say? If his soldiers heard it, they would probably think they were following a fake prince. It was drizzling outside. After lunch, Nan 11 walked to the eaves outside the house, looking at the foggy sky, with a little yearning in her voice. I heard that lovers walking in the rain is a special kind of fun. Do you want to go? Rong Yu stood beside her. Let's go to the garden to appreciate chrysanthemums. Nan 11 turned her head and looked at him. Is it okay? Rong Yu hummed, okay. Nan 11 thought about it and shook her head slowly. No. Why? Nan 11 said, it's cold outside, it's more comfortable to stay in the house. Why? Because she is pregnant now, she can't take risks. If she really goes, Rong Yu is afraid that she will catch a cold and will definitely protect her tightly. It's unnecessary to add extra burden to him for her temporary romance. Nan 11 turned around and sat on the brocade couch in front of the window. Rong Yu brought her a cup of warm tea. Drink it, I'll take you there. Nan 11 raised her head and met Rong Yu's eyes that were always gentle and affectionate. Her heartstrings trembled slightly, and she nodded obediently and drank the whole cup of warm tea. Rong Yu put the teacup aside, stretched out his hand to tie her cloak, picked her up from the brocade couch, and put the hat on her, protecting her whole body tightly and airtight. Turning around and walking to the outer hall, Qingyang tied a large black cloak on Rong Yu's shoulders. Rong Yu lifted the cloak to cover Nan 11 in his arms, almost wrapping her up, not even revealing her eyes. Nan 11 was speechless for a while, and was too lazy to stick her head out to see people. It's only autumn now. For a strong martial artist like Rong Yu, it's far from the time to tie such a thick cloak. For her, he has done his best. And even for herself, it's not really necessary to take such precautions to keep warm. There was a gust of wind in her ears. Nan 11 felt that Rong Yu was moving very fast. He stopped in a blink of an eye and said, 11er. The black cloak was taken off, and Nan 11 finally looked out and found that they had arrived at the warm pavilion. The bamboo curtains hanging around blocked the wind and rain outside. Even if there was occasional wind blowing in through the gaps in the bamboo curtains, the coolness was blocked tightly by the cloak wrapped tightly around her body. Nan 11 even felt a little hot. Sitting in the warm pavilion, you can see large patches of chrysanthemums blooming outside, blooming in the rain with a proud and noble posture, but for some reason, Nan 11's mind flashed some familiar pictures, the woman in noble and gorgeous clothes sitting in the garden warm pavilion, accompanied by a man whose face could not be seen clearly. The picture was so beautiful, but there was a kind of silent sorrow lingering around. Intermittently, it soon disappeared. Nan 11 frowned, subconsciously trying to get rid of those unreal pictures, but couldn't help wanting to see the man's face clearly. Who is he? Why can the two people who appeared in the dream affect her emotions? Are they related to me? 11er. Rong Yu lowered his eyebrows and stared at her calm eyes. What's wrong? What are you thinking about? Nan 11 shook her head slowly. Rong Yu. What kind of woman was the last queen of Dongling? Rong Yu paused. Why are you suddenly interested in her? I just want to know how she became an empress. Nan 11 smiled. Although Dongling has an empress every 200 years, which is the decision of the priest hall, it can be regarded as the will of heaven, but no matter what, since you have inherited the throne, you must shoulder the responsibility of the people of the world, and you need to handle government affairs and govern the country like a male emperor. What kind of woman is this empress? Rong Yu was silent for a moment, and said, I read the political history of Dongling a few days ago. The two empresses in history were both wise and intelligent women. Really? Nan 11 surprised. I wonder if I can do as well as them. Yes, Rong Yu whispered, you can do better than them. Nan 11's lips curved slightly. Do these two empresses have 3 palaces and 6 courtyards? Rong Yu was silent for a moment, and nodded slowly. Yes. All, Nan 11 was surprised, as if she suddenly became interested in the two empresses. How many? Wrong. You answered every question. The first empress, Empress Xiwen, had 16 husbands recorded in the book. Nan 11 was amazed. It seems that she was also a passionate emperor. Recorded in the book means that there are official titles, and there are some without official titles? Wrong. You said in a faint voice, this empress is ambitious and never cares about love. There are many husbands in the harem, mostly for the purpose of consolidating the country. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 264. It seems that like most male emperors, she is a big woman with the world in mind. Nan 11 said thoughtfully, and then asked, what about the second empress? Does the second empress also have so many concubines? The second empress Jinghua only lived to be 30 years old. Wrong. You turned to look outside the Nuan pavilion. None of the 4 imperial concubines died a happy death. No happy ending? Nan 11 was surprised. Why? Because she fell in love with someone she shouldn't have loved. Wrong. Yu's voice was low. This person ruined her empire, killed all her royal husbands, and eventually even the queen died with hatred. Nan 11 was silent, suddenly feeling a little heavy in her heart, but she was still puzzled. Didn't you just say that she is a wise queen? Yes. Wrong. You sat down next to her. She succeeded to the throne at the age of 16. During the 14 years of her reign, the country of Dongling was peaceful and the people were at peace. It was an unprecedented prosperous time. She was indeed better than most emperors in history in governing the world. Nan 11 exclaimed, she is indeed a strange woman. What a pity. It's a pity that it was ultimately ruined by the word love. Does 11er think that person is hateful? Nan 11 groaned and looked up at him in confusion. Who? The man who killed all the queen's husbands. Nan 11 was silent for a moment and slowly shook her head. I don't know. Without knowing the whole story, how can I know whether he is hateful or not? Even the wise and powerful queen is only recorded in the history books. Who knows that she is really that good? Or do you have something to hide? Wrong. You frowned slightly and remained silent for a long time before humming in a subtle way. Seeing him like this, Nan 11 couldn't help but feel suspicious. She felt that when Wrong Yu mentioned Queen Dongling, his reaction was a little different from when he usually mentioned some unrelated people. Her thoughts shifted slightly, and she tried to speak. Wrong Yu. Wrong Yu raised his eyes to look at her, with a faint smile on his lips. Huh. I think the story of Empress Jinghua is more exciting than that of Empress Xiwen, she said. Maybe the emperor's love and hatred are more interesting to explore. Can you tell me about the life of Empress Jinghua? Wrong Yu's eyes fell on her face quietly, and he said softly, do you want to hear it? Nan 11 nodded, yes. Empress Jinghua's maiden name is Danju. She is the eldest among her brothers and sisters, has the most beautiful appearance and the best temperament. Because she was born to inherit the destiny, she will be glorious and honored in this life. Wrong Yu's unfocused eyes fell on Nuan. Outside the bamboo curtain of the pavilion, the usually indifferent and calm voice seemed to be tinged with an incomprehensible color. I was established as the crown prince at the age of 10, and officially became the emperor at the age of 16. The oldest of the princes was 12 when he ascended the throne. The youngest is 5 years old, and everyone respects her, loves her, and is very respectful. Nan 11 listened quietly, thinking in her heart. She understood that she had inherited the destiny. Because it had been 400 years since the throne had been passed down to her generation, the emperor and the high priest must have calculated her fate long ago. As for those princes, maybe the emperor knew that the eldest princess would become the empress of Dongling, so he deliberately delayed giving birth to other children a few years later, so that he could better avoid sibling cannibalism, although the possibility of sibling cannibalism is not high. Not big, but the dynasty that produced a female emperor in 200 years is too special to allow risks, so it is necessary to take precautions before they happen. The eldest princess ascended the throne at the age of 16, and the eldest prince was only 12 years old. Even if he wanted to seize the throne, he would not have the strength. However, the relationship between their siblings seems to be very good. The princes respect the sister, so the chance of having descent will be smaller. Nan 11 retracted her thoughts and returned to her curiosity. She chose the emperor's husband after she ascended the throne. Rong Yu shook his head. Before the eldest princess ascended the throne, there was someone very close to her. Nan 11 was surprised for a moment, and then thought that since she was raised according to the standards of a prince, it was normal for the eldest princess to have men around her to serve her. After all the princes in the past had married and had princesses at an early age, so there was nothing wrong with her being a princess. So she nodded. Is this person the eldest princess's consort? No. Rong Yu shook his head. He was originally humble, but he just had a troublesome appearance. Nan 11's heart skipped a beat, and there was a sharp pain in her heart for no apparent reason. All curiosity suddenly seemed less important. She was silent for a moment and frowned slightly. Am I basing my curiosity on other people's pain? Rong Yu turned to look at her and saw her sad expression. He couldn't help but stretched out his hands to hold her in his arms. That was 200 years ago. Regardless of whether they are suffering or happy, it has long been done in ancient times. There is nothing to care about of. Nan 11 leaned on his shoulder and hummed softly. So, the eldest princess is attracted by his appearance. Rong Yu slowly shook his head. It should be said that he was sent to the eldest princess's mansion as a beautiful servant. Nan 11 frowned. Servant slave. A young man with good looks can be regarded as a tool for the ministers to please the eldest princess. Rong Yu nodded. This boy is unruly and unruly by nature. After being sent to the princess's house, he was first handed over to the housekeeper and the nanny to teach him the rules. However, due to his unruly temper, Kuai-Kei repeatedly angered them and was almost beaten to death at one point. However, he was labeled as the princess's servant and could not really be beaten to death. Later, in desperation, the housekeeper reported to the eldest princess. The eldest princess had many things to do every day, but that day it's the first time I've seen this young man. Unknowingly, Nan 11 was fascinated again. Didn't the princess see this young man when he was sent to the princess mansion? I've never seen him before, Rong Yu said. I saw him later after being reported by the housekeeper. I thought the young man had a good appearance and such an untamable temper. It's really rare. So he took the young man with him personally as soon as he became interested. Ah, Nan 11 was surprised. The eldest princess didn't punish him, but instead the young man got a blessing in disguise. Rong Yu was silent for a moment, then narrowed his eyes and said, it's a blessing in disguise. What happened next? The eldest princess kept him by her side and taught him the rules and etiquette of the royal family. Later, when she saw that he liked martial arts, she specially invited the top master in Dongling to teach him martial arts. The eldest princess read books every day, and the boy also studied the 4 books with her. From the 5 classics, you can learn how to govern a country and learn the emperor's mind. The eldest princess is so kind to him. Nan 11 sighed. The princess should be a very gentle person. Yeah, very gentle. Rong Yu hugged Nan 11's slender body and kissed her hair gently. She used a method of boiling a frog in warm water to tame the boy thoroughly and wear him down. His sharp edges made him put away his sharp claws. From then on, he was completely devoted to her. He abandoned everything in the outside world and only wanted to be driven by her. The boy fell in love with the eldest princess. Nan 11 suddenly realized and raised her head. Is the boy the one who later killed all the eldest princess's husbands? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 265. Rong Yu nodded, yes. Nan 11 fell silent, not knowing how to react. This result seems understandable. If you like someone to the point of paranoia, you will desperately destroy all the opposite sex around her, leaving only yourself. But even from the perspective of a bystander, one would feel that such feelings are actually a bit scary, and the eldest princess is not an ordinary woman. She has the world on her shoulders, and she can be single-minded in her feelings, but it is difficult to achieve marriage. What's more, is he too greedy? Wrong, you asked her. In addition to being greedy, he is also selfish, cruel, and ungrateful. It shouldn't be that bad. Nan 11 frowned, but for some reason, she subconsciously defended the young man. From the perspective of the eldest princess's status, the young man is indeed a bit greedy. After all, the princess really cares about him. It's very good. Even if he can't accept the presence of other men around the eldest princess, he shouldn't kill him. Being a king actually has many choices. Maybe those royal husbands are not what she wants. Yerongu nodded. You're right. What's more, after the eldest princess became the queen, she only had 4 royal husbands around her, so these 4 men must be descendants of Dongling's powerful families. It is obviously not appropriate to kill her like this. It will easily arouse public anger and have a negative impact on the country. It is also very likely to cause some turmoil in the country and even lead to crisis and civil strife. Rongyu said nothing, his eyebrows furrowed slightly, not knowing what he was thinking. But the word love is really harmful. I believe that this boy is unable to restrain his behavior because he likes the eldest princess so much. It is not because of his selfish nature. Rongyu hummed in a low voice, his covered eyes hiding too many thoughts that no one could detect. But Rongyu, how do you know so clearly? Nan 11 was puzzled. Even if there are narrations in history books, most of these things are mentioned in a few words, so a servant shouldn't be given too much writing. Bar. Rongyu came back to his senses and smiled faintly. That servant later sat in the high position of regent of Dongling. He has a very powerful position and has power over the government. Nan 11 understood instantly. Oh, that's it? In this way, it becomes the love, hate, and infatuation between Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince Regent, enough to compose a legendary love with ups and downs, but the ending of this love makes people unable to help but sigh. Nan 11 sighed. Her Majesty the Queen is so wise and wise. She appointed this man as regent even after she ascended the throne at the age of 16 and was able to govern alone. This shows her deep affection for the young man, and she did not hesitate to make an exception for him. What a pity. Originally, it was supposed to be a beautiful love between 2 people, but it ended up being defeated by the unpredictability of the world. 11er Rongyu narrowed his eyes and said in a calm tone, if you were the queen, would you regret your kindness? Would you regret taking this wolf with you who repays kindness with revenge? Nan 11 pondered for a moment and shook her head. I don't know, Her Majesty the Queen will not regret it. Anyway, that is the person she once loved. Rongyu hummed and said nothing. Go back. A smile appeared at the corner of Nan 11's lips. I originally came out to admire the chrysanthemums, but ended up listening to an emotional drama of ups and downs between Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince Regent. Rongyu looked at her deeply, and there seemed to be a lot of unspoken emotions in his eyes, but in the end he said nothing. All the emotions gradually receded like a tide, and finally turned into a plain water. Rongyu picked her up and walked out of Nuanting. Half a day passed too quickly. The light rain stopped in the evening, but the cold weather brought by the rain did not change at all. Nan 11 suddenly wanted to eat hot pot. I should be able to eat something spicy. Nan 11 looked at Rongyu expectantly. I want to eat mutton soup. Rongyu nodded and immediately asked people to prepare. Nan 11 lay lazily on the brocade couch in front of the window, squinting. My life is like a fairy. I eat whatever I want. There are people who take good care of me when I go in and out. I just open my mouth and don't even have to stretch my hands. Then he turned to look at Rongyu. Aren't you worried about turning me into a waste? Rongyu shook his head, not afraid. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, holding her chin, and said in a lazy tone, Rongyu. Please show me the book that records the lives of Empress Jinghua and the Prince Regent if you have the opportunity in the future. Nan 11 said, I really want to know more about their lives. Wrong, you said nothing. Nan 11 raised her eyes, what's wrong? It's nothing wrong, you shook his head, we'll see when we return to Dazhu later. Nan 11 pondered for a moment, do you have one in your study? Wrong, you fell silent again, not knowing whether to nod or deny. This was the first time Nan 11 saw him like this, so she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Wrong, you, the story you told me in Nuanding was not made up by yourself. Right. Wrong, you said, I didn't make it up, but it's not recorded in such detail in the book. Then how do you know so clearly? Nan 11 was surprised, is it possible that you have read some unknown secret history? With his temperament, he doesn't seem like someone who would read the secret history. Wrong, you didn't know how to answer her question, so he could only remain silent for a while. I don't know why, but the love-hate relationship between these two people touched me a bit. Nan 11 turned to look at the gloomy sky outside the window. Maybe women are naturally more interested in ups and downs of tragic love stories, unlike you men. Aiming for the world, all that can be seen is the country and the ambitions of the country. Men and women still have different visions and minds. Wrong Yu's eyes fell on her beautiful and calm side face, and the thoughts in his heart were heavy, just like the huge waves rising on the river and sea under the storm. The waves crashed on the shore, ups and downs, and he could not calm down for a long time. That night, Nan 11 had another dream. It was no longer an intermittent picture, but a young man with bruises all over his body. He looked about 14 or 15 years old. He still couldn't clearly see his face, but could only vaguely see a vague and beautiful outline. May I have your name? There was a strange silence. Tell me your name, and you won't have to look at their faces or get beaten by them in the future. Continuous silence. I don't like disobedient people very much. If you don't want to stay here, you can go back now. I will ask your parents to treat you better, and I will not blame you for this. I ask you again, what is your name? Now that I have entered the princess's mansion, my previous names have turned into ashes. You can call me whatever the princess likes. Does this mean that I am bestowing you with a name? After a period of silence, the unruly voice finally stopped for a moment. Yes. This was their first meeting, and a few words of dialogue destined them to be obsessed with each other for a lifetime, whether it was fate or fate. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 266. Her Royal Highness the Princess did not comment, but only ordered her maid to take him to wash and change clothes, and to find a doctor to check his injuries. After cleaning up, the young man appeared in the study in a green robe. He saw the woman was concentrating on reading Chu Ci. When he came in, she did not turn her head, but said lightly, "What is your last name?" The young man did not speak. The princess looked up at him. The 13 or 14-year-old girl was in her prime, with a stunning appearance and a pair of clear and clean eyes. However, because she was born to inherit the destiny, her eyebrows and eyes were naturally noble and majestic. When I ask you questions, you need to answer in time. The young man was silent for a moment. Well, the princess said lightly, since you don't want to use your previous surname, I will give you a surname of Wrong, which means tolerance, and a name of Weijin, which means beautiful. I hope you can be a gentleman with a noble temperament and a broad mind in the future. The young man did not speak, but he could not hide the shock in his heart at that moment. Perhaps he had never thought about how much a name could bring him, but this princess whom he met for the first time, the Crown Prince of Dongling, took the trouble to read Chu Ci for his name, just to give him a name with a beautiful meaning. Rong Huijin. She didn't ask whose son he was, nor did she ask the purpose of his being sent to the princess's mansion. It seemed that from the beginning of this name, he belonged only to her, a unique person, not controlled or constrained by anyone. From now on, you will follow me and do some reading and ink refining work. Don't worry about other things. After the princess said this, she lowered her head to flip through the files on the desk. No matter what the purpose of your father sending you here is, I have no interest in you. You don't have to treat yourself as a servant or a chess piece. The young man didn't speak, just lowered his head in silence, and kept reciting the new name in his heart. After that day, he followed the princess closely. During the day, when she read and wrote, he was responsible for grinding ink for her. Grinding is a job that requires patience. It took him several days to learn how to mix the ratio of ink and water and how to control the strength of grinding ink. He was clumsy at first and then became proficient. When the princess went to the palace to see the emperor, the queen, and the court officials, he always followed her. He quietly remembered what the emperor or the queen said to the princess. He saw the princess's bearing as a crown prince in front of the court officials. When the army returned, she rewarded the three armies on behalf of the emperor, and the proudest generals of Dongling were convinced by her. This was the crown prince of Dongling Empire, second only to the emperor. A girl who was less than 14 years old, but she was respected by all the civil and military officials in the court. Rong Huijin's eyes fell on the soldiers in iron-blooded uniforms, and he couldn't take his eyes away for a long time. On the princess' 14th birthday, a big banquet was held in the palace. The sons and daughters of the powerful and noble families congratulated the eldest princess respectfully. The elegant and graceful young men did not hide their admiration for the eldest princess in their words and actions, and their affection was overflowing. The eldest princess, who sat in a high position, was unparalleled in her elegance and grace, which made people feel submissive. The young man followed her and received a lot of hostility and jealousy. They felt that he was of low status and unworthy of the noble and elegant eldest princess. They were jealous that he could always be with the eldest princess. Unfortunately, with the eldest princess around, the powerful and noble young men dared to express their bad intentions with their eyes most of the time. Even if someone occasionally said something bad about him in front of the eldest princess would only say lightly, "Huijin is young, you should tolerate him." This tone, like treating her own younger brother, made the young man feel warm and protected. At the same time, he couldn't help but frown slightly, and there was a bit of strange dissatisfaction in the warmth. She was obviously a few months younger than him. One day after the birthday, a middle-aged man came to the princess's mansion. Rong Huijin recognized this man and knew that he was the best master in the palace. He had been with the emperor for many years. Although his status and rank were not high, his power and strength should not be underestimated. "Huijin, he will be your teacher in the future," the princess said calmly. "If you like to practice martial arts, you should study hard. It's not a bad thing. You don't have to practice secretly." The boy frowned. "I didn't practice secretly." The princess had a playful smile on her lips. "Isn't it considered practicing secretly if you don't sleep in the middle of the night to practice martial arts?" The boy was speechless. But facing the princess's clear and beautiful smile, his heartstrings could not help but throb. "From now on, practice martial arts with the master in the morning and read beside me in the afternoon." The boy accepted this arrangement silently. After he came to the princess's side, his temper was much calmer, because the princess never forced him to do anything he didn't want to do, nor did she say anything sarcastic or insulting to him. Even her orders sounded gentle and full of negotiation, which made him unable to refuse, and he never disobeyed her. his time was arranged more and more fully. Even in his dreams, he seemed to be able to feel the changes in the boy. As time went by, it was not only his body that was getting taller, but also his increasingly strong physique and strength, and the girl's bright and warm face that embedded in his heart, and the love that took root in his heart but could not be expressed. To him, the princess was a sacred and noble existence that could not be offended, the untouchable bright moon in the night sky, and the noble white crane in the clouds. And his feelings are taboo feelings. The inferiority complex from the bottom of his heart makes him suppress his feelings day by day, practice martial arts like self-abuse every day, and study military strategies day and night, just to make himself stronger. When he was 16 years old, with everyone watching in shock and complete disbelief, he defeated the best master in the dynasty and started his career. In the words of the master in front of the eldest princess, he has 3 points of qualifications that are beyond ordinary people, and 7 points of perseverance that are different from ordinary people, so it is not a miracle to achieve such results, but few people can achieve it. After hearing this, the eldest princess corrected her words with a gentle smile. 3 parts are different from ordinary people's qualifications, 3 parts are different from ordinary people's perseverance, and the other 4 parts are due to the master's generous teachings. The teacher's contribution is unparalleled. Can't forget. The eldest princess is smart and smart. She has always used her own way to teach the young boy to learn rules and etiquette, and learn to respect teachers. This implicit and gentle way does not give him any feeling of coercion, but it clearly makes him understand. A lot, I learned to deal with people and respect others, which played a big role in the period when I became a powerful minister. The eldest princess ascended the throne at the age of 16. In the first month before she ascended the throne, there was civil strife among the vassals in the southwest territory of Dongling. The eldest princess asked the boy if he had any thoughts of going to war. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 267. The young man thought for a moment and asked, "If you are successful in suppressing the rebellion, will you be rewarded?" Able. The young man nodded and followed the eldest princess's order to lead troops and horses to put down the rebellion. On the eve of the prince's accession to the throne, the power of the government was basically in his hands. He, a fledgling young man, led the army to put down the rebellion, which would naturally arouse the dissatisfaction of many powerful families, because leading the army to put down the rebellion was also a problem for the children of the military general family. An opportunity to accumulate military merit and experience. The opportunity that should have belonged to the children of the aristocratic family was snatched away by this young man who was looked down upon by everyone. All of a sudden, the courtiers wrote letters begging the eldest princess to take back her life. But in the end it didn't work out. The young man at that time had no idea how much resistance the eldest princess had to endure to suppress the dissatisfaction of all the courtiers, just to give him a chance to make military achievements. After more than 4 months, under the scorching sun in June, the young man returned triumphantly with the first batch of loyal soldiers under his command, bringing victory and glory. The sun was exceptionally bright that day, making people dizzy. Sitting on a tall horse, the young man could see the figure standing in the wind on the tower at a glance. It seemed that all the light in the sky was eclipsed. In his eyes, he could only see the beautiful figure who had been tortured by longing for more than 4 months, and nothing else. The girl's gentle and smiling face is the cinnabar that is carved into his bones and blood forever and cannot be erased. He jumped up from the horse, jumped up to the high tower under the shocked and angry eyes of everyone, knelt down, and saluted his favorite princess, without a trace of unwillingness or grievance, and sincerely offered his loyalty. In full view of everyone, he took her delicate white hand and put it to his lips and kissed her. "The princess promised to give me a reward, so can I make a request of my own?" More than 4 months after he went out to fight the rebellion, the young man's appearance is still delicate and handsome, but his facial features are obviously tougher, and his eyebrows are a bit more cold and upright that he didn't have before. Her Royal Highness the Princess has always been tolerant of him. After hearing this, she nodded without hesitation. What request do you want to make? The young man hesitated for a moment. There were thousands of words in his heart, and one after another inappropriate request was stuck in his throat, but he couldn't say a word. He knew in his heart that even if the princess agreed to him, he could not make too many demands because of his status, otherwise he would overestimate his capabilities and put her in a dilemma. The eldest princess saw his hesitation and said with a faint smile, "If you have any ideas, it's okay to say it. After you ascend the throne, can you not choose the royal husband to enter the palace?" He lowered his head and his voice lowered unconsciously. "It's just for the time being." After all, he didn't dare to go too far. His temporary sentence had already exhausted his maximum courage. The eldest princess was silent for a while and nodded gently, "Okay, I promise you." When the young man heard this, his eyes suddenly burst into joy. "Really?" The eldest princess nodded, her voice calm and gentle, "Really?" In fact, according to the practice of Dongling dynasties, after each emperor ascends the throne, the first draft after the new emperor ascends the throne will be held the next month. The eldest princess's enthronement ceremony is in September, and in these 2 days, the details and candidates for the selection of the emperor's husband have been submitted to the imperial court one after another. On the desk in the study room of the eldest princess's mansion, there are also several names of nearly unofficial wives. But all this will be put on hold because of the boy's request. But the eldest princess thought this was nothing. Regent should be rewarded for his military exploits, not to mention the little joy in his eyes. She felt it was worth it. The next situation seemed to have not changed much. The young man who had achieved military exploits was still inseparable from Her Highness the Princess. Even though the emperor and ministers said that this was inappropriate, and the children of the powerful also felt that it was against the rules, Ronghuijin never paid attention to the outside world. In words, "I usually go my own way." However, something is different after all. After more than 4 months of separation, the deep-seated longing made the young man fully understand his feelings for the eldest princess. The once unruly and rebellious edge had completely disappeared after this triumph. His feelings in front of the eldest princess, his attitude became gentle, and he carefully guarded the most important person in his heart. The eldest princess did not hide her concern for this young man. But the emperor's feelings are never a child's play, but are related to the country, and the alliance between the monarch's power and his minister's power. Therefore, no matter how pure the feelings were in childhood, once you sit in that position, many things will happen out of your control. He can only protect his feelings as much as possible within a temporarily limited scope and not let anyone trample on them easily. During the coronation ceremony in September, Her Majesty the Queen officially entered the Taisho Palace, and the boy became the most loyal shadow and the most special existence around him. Although he does not have a cleansing body, he can enter and exit Her Majesty the Queen's bedroom at any time and at any time, personally attend to Her Majesty the Queen's daily life, go to court with Her Majesty the Queen in the morning, and go to the royal study with Her Majesty the Queen to discuss matters after court. He became the #1 master in the palace, the #1 general walking in front of the emperor, and the sharpest sword in Her Majesty's hand. Everyone in the civil and military dynasties knew that he was Her Majesty the Queen's retainer and the person Her Majesty the Queen cared about the most. The Queen valued him more than any of her powerful children, and she cast too many eyes of hostility on him, both overtly and covertly. But in his eyes, there was only the Queen. This night's dream was very long, but Nan 11 was not awakened in the middle of the night. The scene in the dream was like a slowly flowing river, bringing the boy from the age of 14 to the age of 16, transforming him from the unruly wolf cub into a young general. The transition of the picture was clear and natural, without any abruptness. Everything looked so beautiful. Even the hostility of the children of the powerful and aristocratic families seemed to be covered with a layer of fog in the dream, hazy and soft, not very clear. Nan 11 did not open her eyes after waking up, but emptied her mind and lay quietly on the bed. After about an incense stick of time, she began to try to recall all the key points that appeared in the dream, and strung this premeditated dream with the story of Empress Jinghua told by Rong Yu yesterday afternoon, and then quietly fell into thinking. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 268. Rong Yu's eyes fell on the side of Nan 11's face without blinking, and he did not ignore her slightly trembling eyelashes, but he just pretended that he knew nothing. The emotions in his eyes were deep and complex, rippling with emotional fluctuations like the ups and downs of the sea. The light rain that lasted almost all day yesterday washed away the dust in the air. The temperature was a bit cold in the morning, but the air was exceptionally fresh. Xianyuan 11 sent someone to ask if he was going to rush today. The implication was very clear. I didn't get up until noon. Rong Yu didn't hesitate at all and replied, one more day of rest. Obviously he didn't care what his mother-in-law's reaction would be after hearing this. Nan 11 heard his voice and slowly opened her eyes. Rong Yu. Are you awake? Rong Yu said softly, would you like to sleep a little longer? Nan 11 said, I'm full of sleep. Rong Yu hummed and said no more. His noble face was smooth and it was impossible to tell what was going on in his heart. Nan 11's clear eyes fell on his handsome and noble face, and the scene in her dream appeared in front of her eyes. Thinking about the life of Queen Jinghua that he told her yesterday, an incredible guess appeared in her heart. Somehow, the more I look at him, the more I feel a strange and subtle sense of substitution. Rong Huijin. However, how is it possible? What are 11er thinking about? Rong Yu asked in a low voice, with a bit of undetectable depression in his voice, as if he was suppressing some uneasiness. Are you having a nightmare again? No, Nan 11 smiled slightly, I just think you are very pretty. Rong Yu pursed her lips, with a smile on her lips, really? Don't you want to go on your way today? One more day of rest, Rong Yu said, don't be in a hurry. Just arrive at Dongling before the 12th lunar month. Nan 11 smiled lightly, then ask someone to go to the city to buy me some books today. I want to know about the political history of Dongling. Rong Yu was silent for a moment and nodded slowly, okay. Nan 11 got up to wash and change clothes, and Rong Yu waited on her closely, almost without any help from others. An idea suddenly appeared in Nan 11's heart, like an enlightenment. Many things that she didn't understand before seemed to be vaguely explained at this time. For example, why did Rong Yu, the regent who led troops on the battlefield and commanded the ministers in the court, be so good at taking care of women's clothing, as if he had done it countless times? For example, he led the army to fight at the age of 14, and it has only been 8 years since he was 22 years old. How can he intimidate the court and still control such a large force as Juxiao Pavilion? Another example is why she had never been in contact with him before, and was not even outstanding among the rich and powerful women of the Zhou dynasty, but he was determined to only be good to her. For this reason, he did not hesitate to depose the emperor and reprimand Wen. Lan was even so paranoid that he would kill himself without hesitation just because of her words. Why did he like her so persistently and be willing to give everything to her without even frowning? Everything that I didn't understand before now has the most reasonable explanation. As for the so-called unreasonableness, Nan 11 walked out of the room and stood quietly under the veranda, looking at the clean blue sky in the distance after being washed by the rain. She pondered between her eyebrows. What is the relationship between Queen Jinghua, who has been 200 years ago, and herself? What is the relationship between Rong Yu and Rong Huijin? Nan 11 didn't find the fate of her past life ridiculous. After personally experiencing the bizarre events of rebirth, she felt that there was nothing unacceptable about fate, but there were still many things that she needed to continue to seek answers to. Dreamland. Why does such a complete story development appear in dreams? Is she destined to be inseparable from magical dreams in this life, or is all this something she is destined to face? 11 ER. A voice suddenly sounded, breaking Nan 11's daze. Turning her eyes slightly, Nan 11 looked at Xianyuan 11 walking in the corridor, and raised a gentle smile at the corner of her mouth. Mother. Xianyuan 11 walked closer, looked at her suspiciously, and then glanced at Rongyu who was standing beside her. She always felt that the atmosphere at the moment was strange. She had just seen Nan 11 standing in the corridor, looking like she was staring at the sky in a daze, while Rongyu beside her stood as silent as a stone sculpture, her eyes locked tightly on Nan 11's face. If it weren't for the fact that there was no painter in the courtyard, she would have thought that the two of them were planning to paint like this. What's wrong? Xianyuan 11 looked between the two of them. Are you two at odds? Are you having trouble? Nan 11 was puzzled. She turned to look at Rongyu and reached out to hold his hand. How is that possible? Rongyu and I have such a good relationship. Mom, please don't sow discord between us. Rongyu lowered his eyes and looked at the hands held by the two of them, his eyes filled with emotions, his thin lips tightened, and he remained silent. I think the weather is good today. I originally thought I would continue on my way. Everything has been packed away. Xianyuan 11 smiled lightly. I didn't expect you to change your mind again. Nan 11 said warmly, the weather is getting cold, so Mom should keep warm. Xianyuan 11 nodded, I know. Mom. Nan 11 raised her eyes, I have something I want to know about you. Xianyuan 11 was surprised, what's the matter? Let's talk in the house. Nan 11 took Xianyuan 11's hand and led her toward the house, turned to look at Rongyu, her voice was gentle as usual, husband, I'll chat with mother for a while. It rained yesterday, go and take a look. Are Lingfan and the soldiers settled properly? Let them have some hot food to avoid the cold. Rongyu kissed her face and nodded gently, okay. The mother and daughter entered the house and sat down on the couch by the window. We are about to arrive at Dongling, but I don't know much about Dongling systems, so I want to learn about it in advance. Nan 11 smiled faintly, Mom, do you mind telling me about it? Xianyuan 11 said, if you want to know anything, you can ask Rongyu directly. He is a man, his temperament is different from that of ordinary people, and he must not know much about some palace secrets. Nan 11 held her cheek, with a strong desire for knowledge in her eyes. There have been two empresses in Dongling's history. It is said that they were both wise and unparalleled monarchs, and their political achievements were not inferior to those of male emperors of all dynasties. How much do you know about their lives? Xianyuan 11's mouth twitched, are you worried that you can't be as good as the first two empresses? Nan 11 nodded, I am a little worried. There is nothing to worry about. Xianyuan 11 said, with Rongyu here, you will definitely be a good emperor praised by the world. Nan 11 rolled up her sleeves and picked up the pot, lowered her eyes and poured 2 cups of tea, and took a sip of one herself. What I want to know more is the life story of Empress Jinghua. Xianyuan 11 was silent for a moment, and smiled knowingly, you want to know about her emotional experience, right? No wonder she just talked about some palace secrets. Nan 11 smiled lightly, my mother has a sharp mind. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 269. Empress Xiwen and Empress Jinghua made great achievements during their reign. The biggest difference between them is that Empress Jinghua once deeply loved someone, while Empress Xiwen has nothing to comment on emotionally. 3 palaces and 6 courtyards are the norm for emperors, so the situation of Empress Xiwen is too unusual among emperors. She has never truly loved anyone, so no matter how many people there are in the harem, it is not enough to waste too much ink in history books. And Nan 11 wants to understand Empress Jinghua, obviously because she wants to understand her emotional experience. Nan 11 nodded slowly. Empress Jinghua only lived to be 30 years old. Well, she is a strange woman, Xianyuan 11 said. She personally trained and created a generation of powerful ministers, but because of this powerful minister, Yinghua died young and almost destroyed the country. Empress Jinghua was already 16 when she ascended the throne. She probably doesn't need a regent. Why was the person next to her named a regent? Xianyuan 11 glanced at her. You know Empress Jinghua quite well. Nan 11 said, I don't know much, I just heard a few words from Rong Yu. Xianyuan 11 thought for a while. Actually, I don't know much about some things. There are no detailed records in the history books. I only know that Empress Jinghua and the Prince Regent did fall in love. Maybe the Empress loved each other deeper. The more common theory is that the Prince Regent he was very ambitious and wanted to take the throne as his own. At that time, he had overwhelming power and almost controlled the entire court. In the end, he was reluctantly killed by the Empress, so that peace could be restored to the country. After a pause, and after losing the man she loved most, Empress Jinghua was also severely hit mentally. She fell ill and died not long after. Nan 11 frowned. The regent's power is overwhelming, and he is ambitious. This is recorded in the history books, Xianyuan 11 said. Many ministers also firmly believe this. But there is a priest's hall in Dongling, doesn't it mean that no one dares to rebel? Controlling the imperial court and controlling the world, does it make any difference whether he rebels or not? Xianyuan 11 smiled lightly. He used Empress Jinghua's love for him to gradually gather power and evade the queen's power. Even if he did not rebel, he would still have great power in the government. In fact, it is also in the hands of the regent. Nan 11 slowly shook her head. This shouldn't be true. It's not important whether it's true or not. What's important is that the descendants of the royal family in the future will take a warning and won't watch what happened to Empress Jinghua happen again. Xianyuan 11 said lightly. So 11 you come back to Dongling this time. I'm afraid there's still a tough battle to fight. Nan 11 was silent for a moment. Do you think the regent's ambition is really greater than his feelings? Xianyuan 11 looked at her in surprise, wondering how she could be so obsessed with this issue, and pondered for a moment. There is a notebook of Empress Jinghua in the Dongling Palace Library. It has been treasured for many years. If you really want to, if you know the inside story, maybe you can come and have a look. Nan 11 said nothing, and the scene from the dream appeared in her mind. The man who was pleasantly surprised by the eldest princess's words, his biggest wish as a boy was that the eldest princess would not choose an imperial husband for the time being after she ascends the throne. Will such a boy who only cares about the eldest princess change his mind as an adult because of power and interests? Rong Yu said that the man killed all the concubines of Her Majesty the Queen. Such behavior could be understood as jealousy, but in the eyes of the civil and military ministers, it was an attempt to disrupt the imperial court, be authoritarian and domineering, and was unforgivable. Although the achievements of a life are left to future generations to comment on, there are some things that individuals have different subjective understandings of, and the accounts recorded in history will certainly be different. But one thing is for sure. No one knows the truth better than the two people in the game. Nan 11 was silent for a moment and said calmly, my attitude has always been firm. If I marry Rong Yu, I will only have him as my husband in this life. No one can try to influence her marriage. Xianyuan 11 smiled lightly. Rong Yu can't just watch you have any status with other men. Nan 11 didn't say anything, but finally understood why Rong Yu developed so much power. Holding 400,000 soldiers and horses is not enough. The real confidence is to control the huge power of Juxiao Pavilion. Maybe he just wants to have a strong reason to stop her decision to choose the emperor's husband one day. Nan 11 thought about it. Her eyes and heart were filled with ripples, and she didn't know how she felt in her heart. Since I'm not in a hurry today, Mom will take this opportunity to have a good rest for another day. Nan 11 finished drinking the tea in her hand and put down the cup. If you want to go to the city for a walk, let Yin Yu and Yin Shuang accompany you. Is this your husband who can't wait to find you? Xianyuan 11 smiled and shook his head, with some understanding in his eyes, and stood up to leave. It seems that he has figured out something and wants to talk to Rong Yu. Clearly, but I'm still curious. Are you worried that you and Rong Yu will follow in their footsteps when you suddenly become interested in the relationship between Empress Jinghua and the Prince Regent? Nan 11 shook her head, no. Xianyuan 11 saw that she didn't want to say more, so he couldn't help but smile and said, young girls can't help themselves, so I won't ask any more questions. The sun has risen outside, and the bright weather is much warmer than yesterday. The bright sunshine makes people feel relaxed, and there is a bright and comfortable feeling of parting through the clouds and seeing the moonlight. After Xianyuan 11 left, Nan 11 told Yin Yu to prepare a rich breakfast. Then she walked out, found out where Rong Yu was, turned around, and walked towards the back garden. From a distance, I saw a man standing in the warm pavilion where they were yesterday. Different from the closure yesterday, today all the bamboo curtains in the pavilion are open and fixed with strings by the maid. The man standing alone in the warm pavilion looking at the boundless sky, his figure standing with his hands behind his back, slender and thin, standing tall and silent, making people feel an lingering loneliness and desolation, which makes people feel distressed for no reason. Nan 11 felt a subtle pain in her heart. She sighed softly and walked along the garden path. Rong Yu, who had a high level of cultivation and keen senses, did not notice Nan 11's arrival until she entered the warm pavilion today. He was immersed in his own thoughts, as if his soul was wandering in the sky. Nan 11 stood quietly in the warm pavilion for a moment. Seeing that he did not respond, she could not help but walk forward slowly with some helplessness, walked behind him, gently stretched out her hands to wrap around his waist, and put her cheek against his back. Rong Yu. Rong Yu came back to his senses instantly, was silent for a moment, turned around and gently embraced her in his arms. Rong Yu, Nan 11 whispered, was Rong Huijin sentenced to death by Empress Jinghua? Rong Yu pursed his lips and said in a low voice, no. Does Rong Huijin have the ambition to become emperor? No. Then he. Nan 11 raised her eyes, with deep affection in her eyes, did he plot against Empress Jinghua? Rong Yu was silent, his noble and handsome face was as stiff as an ice sculpture, and after a long time he said, I did. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 270. Nan 11 said, I also think Rong Huijin has plotted against Empress Jinghua. Rong Yu pursed her thin lips and looked as pale as snow, isn't he worthy of death? Damn it, Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and smiled lightly, why? Rong Yu remained silent. The biggest mistake Rong Huijin made was that he should not despise his own life and let Empress Jinghua die of grief and despair. Nan 11 turned her head and looked at the chrysanthemums outside the hall. I think there is nothing wrong with loving someone, deep in love, many things are beyond our control, so the two of us should work together to find ways to overcome them, instead of doing extreme things and leaving no escape route for ourselves. The corners of Rong Yu's lips were almost pressed into a straight line, and his handsome face was tense, as if he didn't know how to respond to the sentence. Rong Yu, do you think Rong Huijin deserves to die? Rong Yu was silent for a moment, yes. Why? Rong Yu didn't say anything, but hugged her tightly unconsciously. Look, you think he deserves to die, but you can't tell why he deserves to die. Nan 11 turned her head and looked at him softly. Falling in love with Empress Jinghua is the beginning of his destiny. The deeper he falls in love, the less able he is to control himself. Possessive, so she couldn't tolerate the presence of other men around her. I think that when Empress Jinghua first chose her husband, he must have gone through a painful struggle and had a hard time convincing himself that he had to accept this fact. but in the end he couldn't restrain himself. After a pause, maybe there are other reasons for this. Maybe the royal husband's family put too much pressure on the queen, which angered Ronghuijin. He can tolerate himself being jealous, but he can't tolerate others hurting him. The beloved woman did not hesitate to offend the public and get rid of those royal husbands, but in the end she took all the blame. Rongyu's expression was complicated, and there was a hint of hesitation in the way he looked at her. "What's wrong?" Rongyu said calmly, "Why do you think so? Why do you think so? It's very simple." Nan 11 closed her eyes and fell silent, because every time that man followed the Empress since he became an adult, there was a lingering loneliness and sorrow around him, which he never had when he was a teenager. The 16-year-old boy looked at when she was the eldest princess, she only had bright admiration and submission in her eyes. The two people's inseparable intimacy and affection for several years took root in the boy's heart. The most beautiful and pure love in his youth gradually entered adulthood. His feelings deepened and his desire for exclusivity became stronger and stronger. However, reason and the overall situation forced him to learn to tolerate it. However, everything can be tolerated, but the crazy emotions growing in my heart cannot be controlled. You think Ronghuijin did something wrong, but you can't tell where he went wrong. Nan 11 smiled faintly, because even if you give him another chance, he will probably make the same choice. Knowing that falling in love with an emperor is very difficult, he would still choose to fall in love with the eldest princess when he was young, and step by step take control of the power in order to protect his feelings, knowing full well that the hostility coming from all around is beyond his control. Standing next to the king of a country is destined to face countless swords and swords, he still won't give up his feelings. Her Majesty the Queen has to worry about the world and ensure the stability of the country, so she can only compromise her love. Standing in the position above tens of millions of people, everyone has their own helplessness and cannot be willful. Emotions and rationality are always present. She is struggling in the whirlpool all the time. The person who falls in love with her is doomed to be anxious and uneasy. When he sees other men around the queen, he will become jealous and crazy. When he becomes more and more powerful, the major families use the banner of King Jun to force the queen. After getting rid of powerful officials, when his patience reaches the limit, he will still choose to kill him. So since they were young, this ending has been destined, step by step, in the direction arranged by God, until they end their lives. No one can change it. Unless their destiny is completely overturned from the beginning, they will be able to restart this relationship that has been unforgettable and full of regrets for both of them. Rongyu Nan 11's lips raised slightly, "Don't you ask me how I know Ronghuijin." Rongyu's fingertips trembled slightly, and the color in his eyes surged. After a long time, he said, "How do you know? What do you think?" Rongyu was quiet for a moment and then said, "Did my mother-in-law tell you?" No. Nan 11 shook her head, "I had another dream last night." Rongyu closed his eyes and said nothing. Nan 11 smiled faintly, "Rongyu, do you think it's strange that I have been dreaming a lot these days? What a coincidence, just after you told me the story about Empress Jinghua and the powerful minister yesterday, I started dreaming about it at night. Do you think this is a coincidence?" Rongyu looked at her and shook his head slowly, "It's not a coincidence." "How to explain that?" Rongyu said nothing. Rongyu Nan 11 raised her head and held his face with her hands. "What are you worried about? Are you afraid of making the same mistakes again? Are you afraid that the tragedy will happen again, or are you afraid that I will eventually leave you?" Rongyu looked at him, her thin lips pursed tightly, her eyes, which were usually indifferent and deep, seemed to be filled with strong winds and waves. He stared at the bright and gentle smile of the girl in front of him for a moment, as if it overlapped with the person in his memory. It was so gentle and tolerant that his heart gradually sank and he could never break free. Husband and wife are one body. I guess if Empress Jinghua had a choice, she would not choose to be an emperor, but would rather spend her life with the person she loves. It's just that responsibility hindered their luck. Nan 11 raised her eyes and kissed the corner of his lips. No one is a saint. Everyone has 7 emotions and 6 desires. Now 200 years have passed. Whether it is Rong Huijin or Empress Jinghua, they have become history. We can take out their stories to reminisce after dinner, be moved by the protagonist's persistence, and sigh at the imperfect ending. But the stories of our predecessors are a warning to us, and can also be used as an inspiration and guidance, so that we can plan ahead and make more and better preparations. Rong Yu, don't you think so? Rong Yu didn't know what to say. He was silent for a moment and could only follow her. Nodding, yeah. Although Dongling is my mother's hometown, it is a completely unfamiliar place to me. When I get there, I still need your protection. You must put all your thoughts on me and not immerse yourself in unfounded anxiety all day long, distracting yourself from other things. Nan 11 said, many things in the world are not that complicated. They are often the result of self-deception. You are such a powerful person, you should be proud of others. Don't think about it all day long, like those girls who are sad about the spring and autumn, and melancholy about flowers. Rong Yu pursed his lips, and his tone seemed to be defensive. I am not melancholy about flowers. You are melancholy about me. Nan 11 raised his eyebrows. Don't think I don't know that you haven't slept for these 2 nights, staring at me all night, and I don't know what you are wondering about.